All right, good afternoon, everybody. It is March 2nd, Sunday, March 2nd, already in the third month of the year, which is crazy. So, this is the last month of our first quarter, and it's been a good quarter so far. So, I'm going to go ahead and get started I'm going to read half of chapter 28 from the book of Deuteronomy. And this is pretty much, God is speaking to his people who are about to enter the promised land after all the years that they spent in the wilderness. Um, the wilderness is symbolic of sin, in our lives and how when we kind of come to God and come to submission to him, we have to spend time in the wilderness ourselves, just being refined and tested. Same thing that Messiah had to go through. He went into the wilderness for 40 days and he was tempted and tested, and this is where God refines us. And this is the end of their refinement in the wilderness. And he's bringing the new generation into the land that he had promised to Abraham and to his seed. And Moses is still around. So he's speaking through Moses at this point, and this is at the end of Deuteronomy, and Deuteronomy is the book where he gives the statutes and the laws and all of the commands that is our side or their side of the deal of the covenant, right? He gives them a way of life. The Bible says, if you do these things, you shall live by them. So he gives them a way of life to live that is pleasing to him. And it also sets them apart as his people. It allows them to live in a holy manner because God is holy. So he gives them a way to live that is completely different than the rest of the world, the rest of the nations around them. And at the end of this book, he kind of he speaks through Moses and he says all of the blessings that are involved with being obedient to God and holding our side of the covenant, not breaking it, when he didn't even have to make a covenant with us in the first place. And he reads out or he speaks the blessings of this covenant. And then the second half, he speaks the curses of this covenant. And I know as believers, people don't want to hear, it's kind of just like, oh, if you believe in God, we only speak like, oh, God's going to bless me or God's going to do this for me or because God loves me. It's that kind of attitude. And I feel like believers don't really ever speak of, you know, the consequences for being disobedient or, the ways that God disciplines us. Um, and so that's in the second half of this chapter, which is chapter 28 in the book of Deuteronomy. And so I'm not going to read those curses, but just know that they are there. And a lot of them, when you go through them and read them, I highly recommend it, is you can see them being like, you can see them taking place today, all the way up until today, sickness, you know, um, like natural disasters, you can see them happening because we've fallen so far away from God. So I highly recommend that you go ahead and read that because, I mean, as a believer, I'm going to just read the blessings, but I'm not going to sit here and say there's no curses if you disobey because there are. And I would recommend that you would read the rest of that chapter because it's intense. It's not fun to think about, but we're supposed to work our faith out with fear and trembling of God. And if you don't have fear of God, you don't have any wisdom. So I'm going to read the blessings, but there are consequences. You know what I mean? Because I feel like as believers, we don't take seriously um too much because we're like, oh, well, God's may or may not bless me, but I can go over here and I can make my own way and I can get my own blessings, right? It's kind of like a subtle attitude. But it's like, no, homie, if you have walked into a covenant with the creator of the universe and you disobey, there are consequences. And it doesn't matter what you do, how many plans you make, how much skills you acquire, how much money you earn, how much stuff you save up, that you're never going to outrun the judgment of the Almighty. It's just not going to happen. So that keeps us balanced. It keeps us checked, right? We're working out our faith with fear and trembling, okay? Because he's a good father, and a good father disciplines their child. So, again, go read the rest of this, but I'm only going to read the blessings, all right? So, again, this is Deuteronomy chapter 28. I'm starting at verse 1. Um, and again, just to repeat the context, the Israelites and the new generation after the 40 years in the wilderness, a lot of the Israelites had been killed off in the wilderness because of their disobedience. And so only a portion of them were at Mount Sinai, however you want to say it. Only a portion of them were there and witnessed God himself descend on the mountain in the clouds. Um, and he did that for a reason so that they would see him with their own eyes. Um, to strike fear in them, fear of God. And so there's only a portion of them left that had actually witnessed that with their own eyes. The rest of the Israelites at this point in time are the newer generation that was born in the wilderness. And, as at this point in time, once Moses passes away, they're going to be able to go into the land that was promised to them. And they have no excuses here, guys. He gave them all of his laws, all of his rules, all of his like, hey, if you do this, this might happen to you. So this, he told them exactly what was up beforehand, before going into this land. Um, and so when they go into that land, many of us know that they didn't do what they were supposed to do, but I'm just pointing this out because there's not really any confusion. It's not like God is like, come into this land and they did stuff and he didn't let them know not to do that beforehand like he did. And so this is literally right before Moses passes away. And this is Moses prophesying, God prophesying through Moses right here. So Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 1. And it shall be, if you diligently obey the voice of Yahuwah your Elohim to do all his commands, which I commanded you today, that Yahuwah your Elohim shall set you high above the nations of the earth. And all these blessings shall come upon you and overtake you if you obey the voice of your Elohim. Blessed are you in the city, and blessed are you in the field. Blessed is the fruit of your body, and the fruit of your ground, and the fruit of your livestock, the increase of your cattle, and the offspring of your flocks. Blessed is your basket and your kneading bowl. Blessed are you when you come in, and blessed are you when you go out. Yahuwah causes your enemies to rise against you, to be smitten before your face. They come out against you one way and flee before you seven ways. Yahuwah commands the blessings on you in your storehouses and in all to which you set your hand, and shall bless you in the land which Yahuwah your Elohim is giving you. Yahuwah does establish you as a set apart people to himself, as he commands, as he has sworn to you, if you guard the commands of Yahuwah your Elohim and walk in his ways. And all peoples of the earth shall see that the name of Yahuwah is called upon you, and they shall be afraid of you. And Yahuwah shall make you to have plenty of what is good, and in the fruit of your body, in the fruit of your livestock, and in the fruit of your ground, in the land which Yahuwah swore to your fathers to give you. Yahuwah opens to you his good treasure, the heavens, to give the rain to your land in its season, and to bless all of the work of your hand. And you shall lend to many nations, but you do not borrow. And Yahuwah shall make you the head and not the tail, and you shall be only on top and not be beneath. If you obey the commands of Yahuwah your Elohim, which I command you today, to guard and to do, and do not turn aside from any of the words which I am commanding you today, to the right or to the left, or to go after any other mighty ones to serve them. And I'm going to stop there at verse 14. Um, no, I'll go into 15. So this is 15. And it shall be, if you do not obey the voices of Yahuwah your Elohim to guard to do all of his commands and his laws, which I command you today, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you. And then it lists all the curses. That I'm just saying, like, when you look around in the world today and what's going on in society, like, these curses are happening. You know what I mean? Because we've been so disobedient. And so you see all of the ways in which we're blessed. And you even look at the body, like the modern day body, and all those blessings that I just read out. It's kind of like you see some believers that have an appearance of those blessings, you know what I mean, that are lending to people, not having to borrow money, but they're the lenders. You see some people that are set above everybody else. You see some people where they don't have any enemies. You see some people that like their storehouses are full. But for the most part, in my point of view, like even the body is struggling. They're struggling with sickness. They're struggling with poverty. They're struggling with things that are not on the side that you want to be on. And so that's why it's so important to study the covenant because we have a part in it. We have a part in it. It's not just like, oh, I believe in God and I believe he's going to bless me, so it's going to happen. It's like, let me read it again to you. Like, where's that one verse? Where is it? Where is it? If you obey the commands of Yahuwah your Elohim, Yahuwah is the Most High, that's the Almighty, if you've never heard anyone pronounce his name that way. If you obey the commands, if that's a small word, but it's a really big word. If you obey the commands of Yahuwah your Elohim, which I command you today to guard and to do, guys, we're to guard these, like guard our life, like it depends on it. And if you do not turn aside from any of the words which I am commanding you today, to the right or to the left. So I mean, like me personally, I really surrendered to God. I would say like almost 2 years ago now. I grew up a Christian. You know what? I grew up going to Christian church, and I was just like always taught like if you believe, once you believe, you're always like once saved, always saved. If you believe, and that's it. Like that's you just belief, right? And while belief is the only thing that gives us salvation, right? We're still called to obey. And if we don't obey God, the one who gave us salvation, Jesus, right? If we don't obey that, then we're going to get disciplined, just like a father disciplines his child. And so we got to wake up to this. You know what I mean? Because there's so much blessings for the body. There's so much blessings. And he wants to give it to us. Like he literally said, if you do these things, I will bless you. I will do all these things for you if you keep your part of the deal. You know, like you can't just believe in me. What does the book of James say? Even the demons believe. You can't just believe in me and be like, okay, I'm done. Right? That's all I need to do. That's all that's required of me. No, no, no. The book of James says even the demons believe. So that's why he shows his faith by his works, right? So that's just my TED Talk for today. Because there's blessings in studying and knowing his commands and reading the word for yourself and knowing what those commands were. Because, like I said, me growing up, I was a Christian, right? You know, John 3:16. Um, whosoever believeth in him shall have eternal life. You know what I mean? But I literally was walking in curse after curse after curse after curse. And come to find out when I read the word for myself and I fully surrender to his will, it was my fault. The reason I was walking in all of those curses was because I was being disobedient to my father. And like, thank goodness that he disciplined me and I can see it now. But I don't know. I just feel like we use God as like I don't know, just, it's like, oh yeah, God's gonna bless you. God's gonna do this. God's gonna do that. It's like, he's not a genie. You know what I mean? And I want so badly for people to come into his blessings, but I also want so badly for God to get the obedience that he so rightly deserves because he's done so much for us. And it's like a two-way street. So I've seen so much blessings in my life from, letting him refine me. And I really hope that, anybody listening to this, they're able to experience that too, because it's so much better than what the world has to offer. But all right, I'm gonna go ahead and pray real quick. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for this day. Thank you so much for your word that is a two-edged sword that penetrates deeper and deeper and deeper the more that we seek it, Father. Father, I just pray for anybody on this call. I pray for anybody listening to this call, Father, that you would just come to them and you would just convict them, Father. You would just show them and discipline them and show them that you love them and just let them know what it is that they need to fix because you want them to rise up. You want to bless them. You want to give them the treasures of your love, Father. And so I just pray that those who are listening would have ears to hear and eyes to see, that they would be able to come into your will, Father, that they would be able to see the works of the devil, the bondage that's not physical, but it's spiritual, Father, and that you give us these commands that we may walk in them that will protect us. They protect us, they set us apart for your glory, Father. And I just pray for the blessings of that to come to fruition as we walk in your command. That you would make that command known to people who maybe haven't heard this before, maybe are kind of in the common church and, they're just taught one side of it because, that church wants them to keep coming back. They want them to keep hearing what they want to hear. They want to keep stroking, you know, speaking sweet things, Father. And, as your word is sweet, Father, there's also another side to it that the devil wants to use to deceive us, and not hear that portion of it so that we might transgress against you and not even know it, Father. So I just pray that you would give eyes to the people, that you would give ears to them to hear, Father, and bring them into your will. Convict them of the things that they need to change, Father, to come into your love, come into your fold, come into your sheep, Father. Father, I pray for this analysis that you would just give the wisdom and understanding to me to be able to analyze the markets today, that we'd be able to analyze them in order to capitalize in the moves of this upcoming week. Father, that you would give us warnings and eyes to see the volatile events that could be possibly happening with this current presidency and the current things that are going on in the world, Father, that don't necessarily, that are kind of outside of the norm, Father, that you would protect us from any set of movements, Father. Again, I thank you so much for this day, Father. I bless your name. I bless your name of the Most High, Father. And these things, and I pray in your Son, Yahushua's name. Amen. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the dollar. We definitely did get a retracement, and we came into, let's see, Tuesday, Monday. Okay, so I think last week we were looking for, this was the low the previous week. We were looking for a sweep of that low because we're in our buying point of interest. And price is either going to come up and reject at this order block, or it was going to break through into, we have a gap here. And I think there's some more objectives higher up. But we for surely got a rejection on our buying point of interest. So it came right into here and it bounced. So at this point, we're right here. So I do think that price can turn around and continue lower because of the tariffs. We should see the dollar weakening. Um, but there is definitely more room for it to come up. We probably got a weekly order block, I bet. I think it's CPI this upcoming week too. So, oh no, not CPI. We've got unemployment, non-farm, unemployment claims. Okay, so I mean, we've got some decent volatility. It's CPI next week though. So yeah, so weekly order block. Easiest way to do this is to just throw a fib on it like this. So if we're gonna keep continuing bullish for the week, obviously you already know I'm gonna expect that high to get taken out, last week's high. And I feel like order flow is really important this week. So take out that high, right? Retrace either to golden zone or the lower optimal trade entry 78. We'll just go to 70, right? And then price continues higher. So how high price wants to go, not sure. If it's going for an overall new high in the swing, that's possible. We could just be coming into these smaller time frame gaps, and then we could just make a lower high, which means this trend would hold. We have a lower high, lower low, and then we could go back down eventually. So for now, we'll just leave that here. That would look like a bullish week to us. Um, I think though, like if we go down first, right, and bounce, and then go up, and like we're up in here by around like Tuesday, I'm gonna think that we're gonna turn around a lot quicker, and maybe make a new low. So I'm not sure how high this would go, if it would want to come up into the gaps or just respect this high right here. But we did already violate this trend. So this would be like our Tuesday, Wednesday. And then for the bullish week, this would be like our Tuesday, Wednesday. So I'm not really sure where we're at with like the news. Trump heads toward tariff barrage on Canada, Mexico, and China. US to add 25% levies on Mexican products, most Canadian goods. Trump would also double China levy barring last minute delay. Barring. Does that mean that means delaying, right? It's October. Um, Another stream is a series of tariffs on specific sectors that includes 25% on steel and aluminum, due to take effect on March 12th. So that's a new date I haven't seen. Also planning on auto, semiconductor chips, pharmaceutical drugs, all be imposed as soon as April 2nd. I have heard that date before. Okay, so I mean, the fact that he keeps pushing it out just makes me think that there's still a possibility. He's like giving them a chance to, I don't know, probably submit to something. Um, so there could possibly be a chance of that the tariffs changing again. Reports due by April 1st. Um, but March 12th, that's in 10 days. So, I mean, I would feel like the second those tariffs hit, it would definitely push the dollar down. So, if we're just retracing back up higher in the meantime, that would make sense. But that's pretty much where I'm at. Let me get rid of this. So all of our points of interest have been mitigated, except for these guys all the way up here. It's always the little gaps that you never pay attention to. Those are the ones that are like the most sniper entries. And it's right in resistance too. So I'll definitely be having my eye on that. I'm gonna put a marker at the bottom of this trend right here. Okay. And then of course CPI is next week, so we'll see what happens with that. I know Trump is like pressuring the Federal Reserve to uh loosen interest rates. In which they're not obligated to listen. So Okay. Okay, so the NASDAQ just, I don't remember if we got a retracement, but it pretty much just opened um and just dropped all week into we came into finally we came into our macro like liquidity pools. So we're in a buying point interest. We took this liquidity and we took this liquidity. Um so finally I can delete. I think we've had these markings up down here on this chart for a long time. Okay, we're gonna get rid of all this stuff right now. Finally, finally, finally. Okay. Yeah, so we even came all the way down into here. I will say there's still a gap. There's a gap and an order block right here, so I'm just gonna make that a whole entire box and combine those. We'll put IPY here. Price wants to keep selling. This will be the next point that I see here. And then, of course, we do have lower liquidity. Still resting below right here, but we just swept a lot of money. A lot of money came out into the market and probably is going to be going back in. If you can see here on the 4 hour, we already broke structure to the upside again. And we did come into the second 4 hour block. So let's see if we can get a better view on like the 8 hour. Yeah, so I'm gonna so it kind of just depends like based on what the dollar does for the most part. But if the dollar wants to keep climbing, I mean, why not keep selling here? Because this is kind of like the trading range we're in. This is the top of the range, and this is the bottom of the range right here. So it's kind of free game inside of that range. Um, some people would call this an order block right here. I typically like to have a white candle here and then a black candle, but people would consider that an order block. We are in this bearish 4 hour order block. So it'll definitely be interesting to watch what price does here. And then I know there was like the earnings coming out for I forget which stocks it was, but it was part of like the Magnificent Seven. The earnings were coming out. I don't remember if those earnings, but something happening with those companies that was like tanking the price and whatnot. So I would encourage going and doing some fundamental research. But yeah, so we got this one for the most part, and we ended up down here. Okay, so I see a few things happening. I see either price wants to tap this order block and then climb higher into the resistance of this high, and we could pivot towards the downside again. Um, we could kind of get the same thing happening. Oopsie. Like open a bit higher, sell into that order block, and then we could come up and we could actually break up above this, right? And break that high. Either because we're just coming into this gap right here or this gap right here, and then we're going to turn around to go to the downside. Or I'll kind of do a scenario where we like make it into this gap and then pivot. That's pretty volatile though. I don't know if we'll get that whole movement sequence this week. Or another thing that I see is that we could open lower first and then, or you know what, scratch that. We open higher first, come into this resistance area, and then we sell into our next point of interest. Um, maybe going lower into the liquidity that we had over to the left here. And then we either consolidate here or we just begin to go higher. Okay. I think on option number two, price opens lower into the 4-hour order block and buys breaking above the daily high into higher gaps on the daily, either staying in the area for the week or pivoting to the downside. So in the case that it pivots to the downside, I would think that that would happen. Like we'd get a wick right here, a rejection wick around Wednesday. And then in the scenario that it just wants to stay here for the rest of the week, I would think that price would still be around here around Wednesday, and then it would start pushing up, and then just like consolidate or retrace for that week. I am a little more biased for a bearish week this week, though, personally. Okay, and then, whoa, wait a minute. Why is this chart at 94 and the futures chart is at 84? It's interesting. Usually it's the other way around. So Dow Jones was kind of different. We pretty much just consolidated all week, literally. Um, I'm sure you guys remember from last week. This is the Fibonacci zones from our 3-week order block. So I'm gonna delete that because we're mitigated there already. This bigger one is the optimal trade entry zone one. That's still in play, but we pretty much just consolidated here. We can just go ahead and mark up all of these equal highs right here as a point of liquidity, because if the indices want to keep going down this next week, then I would look for like a buy up into this pool here and look for a rejection to possibly give a good opportunity for a sell. Oh yeah, I'm kind of remembering our analysis from last week. Okay, so there was 2 weekly order blocks. Um, so pretty much we said like option one takes out last week's low and then fills imbalance and tapping the weekly order block below first and then retraces higher into the bearish weekly order block above to pivot Tuesday, Wednesday to sell deeper into the 3-week optimal trade entry zone. That didn't happen, the last part of that, but the first part of it did happen. I just think it happened kind of out of order. So we got Monday, Tuesday. Let's mark this real quick. Okay. So this line right here is the closure of that weekly imbalance and the top of that bullish weekly order block. So we had Monday kind of not do anything, and then Tuesday is when we hit that order block. And then we continued to consolidate and we went even lower into it. So now we have this one, it looks like price is heading to. So this one's done, mitigated, gap closed, order block tapped into. Um, we have a rejection wick right here, so price is definitely heading towards this one. So our analysis from last week is still kind of in play. So we've got this bullish order block. So let's just say we open lower and then higher into this liquidity. And we'll also be hitting the weekly order block and then we pivot again to sell deeper. So yeah. So yeah, so we open lower to sell into, there's a 4 hour order block here as well, but this is also a daily order block. Use that daily order block to buy up into the liquidity and tap into the weekly, and then we pivot. Something else I could see happening is we actually open higher. We reject here, sweeping liquidity, sell into that daily order block, come back up, fill the imbalance, and tap the weekly bearish, and then we pivot. Um, and then I really don't see much potential for a bear or for a bullish week, honestly, but let's see. Yeah, because even the 2 week is a bearish order block. But we do have this rejection right here. We filled this 2 week. So upon tapping into this 2 week bullish, we made a 2 week bearish. We've got 5 days left to close this candle. We have a bearish on, oh wow, okay. 2 week. So yeah, we're even bearish. Let me just take a second look at this. I'm gonna throw a fib on here real quick and see if that changes our analysis. Go back to a daily. I mean, not really. We're looking at this gap right here and this gap right here as a potential area for price to come to and pivot back to the downside. So that coincides perfectly with how that 2 week order block is set up. Um, so I'm gonna actually add that real quick. So yeah, so I'm just gonna clarify, and this is gonna become sell point of interest, and then we'll do another one right here. Glad I looked at that because that kind of gives me more confluence for these areas. But yeah, I mean, we have 2 week order block as well on here. So that is going to also line up perfectly. So if we just throw a fib on this order block right here, we're already getting that rejection. So it looks like we're making our way back up already to retrace, in which we do have this one to fill as well. So that lines up pretty perfectly with what we already saw on the lower time frames. Yeah, I mean, if you want to be really like, there's this imbalance here and this 4 hour order block, but I'll just put like a small box around it like this, just in case. Just in case price wants to go up there and try to fake me out. Oops. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm just gonna leave it like this. I don't really see much possibility for like a bullish. I mean, unless we could like sweep this first, come down into these order blocks, and then this is like, for whatever reason, it just wants to consolidate. And then this point in time ends up being our Tuesday, Wednesday, and then we pivot up to our areas of interest right here. And then just the week ends bullish so that the next following week is a sell. I could see that happening. Um, Okay. Okay, so that's pretty much what I see going on this week. Let's check on USD CAD because it's doing really well, although I did take a loss on it last week. Um, so it came into, let's see, where's this is Thursday, Friday. Okay, so it came up into the first selling POI I had my eye on. I think this was a daily order block. Yeah, right here. And so I ended up taking a sell, stop me out, which I'm fine with, but it came up higher into our original selling POI, which is really good. Um, and it looks like we're gonna keep an eye on this low 100%, but it looks like it may just make it up to this imbalance that we had marked, or at least somewhere in here. There's an imbalance right here as well. But again, just remember we had this bearish weekly after it swept macro liquidity right here. The 2 week is also a bearish order block that it's coming up into. And then let's see, the 3 week is looking promising with this big old wick right here. There is 5 days left of the current candle left, so I could see it also wicking down. Um, so yeah, so we're gonna continue to keep an eye on it. It's doing what we expected. If it wants to keep going and buying, because the dollar doesn't want to get weaker for whatever reason, it is what it is. But for the most part, it's going well. I did take an L on it last week, but I mean, if this goes as planned, it's definitely going to um, make up for that and more. So, all right, guys, I hope you have a blessed week. I will see you on the analysis next Sunday. Have a good day, Rob. And I'll post the screenshots in the group as well.